Greetings and salutations, my minions. Now, I'm sure we've all seen those stereotypical weebs online, and while I proclaim to be a weeb from time to time, I'm definitely not one of these stereotypes. So it should come as no shock to you for how a campaign with a very thirsty stereotypical weeb would go. But the question is, how does it get there? Well, that's what we'll answer today. Let's roll for initiative and begin the stories. Story number 1. The time a thirsty weeb nearly ruined my campaign. I have a story for you. The year was 2018. The Looney Year, as what it has been called. Or that was me. I started playing D&D a few months after I began playing Magic the Gathering. I'm a quick learner in terms of how to play things, and became fairly good at D&D. I didn't know it was possible to become good at D&D, but I digress. Our DM allowed homebrews under the condition that there was a page online to reference the class and/or race, along with the notion of not making them OP from jump and nerfing where it was needed. Everyone was fine with this. One day, after taking some lessons from my DM, I was ready to DM my first ever campaign. I will admit, I was nearly scared crapless. Like, I am pretty good with learning things quickly, but I lack the needed components for public speaking. But my DM assured me that everything will be fine. With everything sorted and my campaign ready to be launched, we gathered at a local game store to begin the session. There were 4 people in my campaign. Their names were James, Marcus, Tiana, and Alec. For PCs, we had a Tiefling Paladin, Lawful Good, played by James. Dragonborn Monk, Lawful Neutral, played by Alec. Half-Elf Warlock, Chaos Neutral, played by Tiana. And an Incubus God Eater, Chaos Good, played by Marcus. Seeing that this didn't clash with my campaign as it was taking place in a steampunk universe, I allowed it. The first sessions were going great. I told the PCs that they were members of the joint army called the Silver Star, where the 4 major races had collaborated together to fight the Army of the Abyss. The campaign was going exactly how I wanted it to. Everything was great. Until, in the campaign, I told them they were ordered by the new commander of the Silver Star. Seeing that I had the previous commander killed at the beginning of the campaign, it was part of the script that I wrote, and no, the PCs didn't kill him. The opening of the campaign had it that they were waking up on the battlefield from a powerful spell that had knocked them out, and witnessed the commander being killed right in front of them. Anyway, the new commander ordered them to go and speak with the Empress of the Beastken, one of the 4 major races, and find out why they had pulled out of the joint alliance. It was at this moment that Marcus spoke up. "I want to dock the commander. She's hot," snickered Marcus, already beginning to roll his dice for a charisma check. "I didn't say anything yet in regards to that. You can't roll your dice yet," I shot back. "But my character is an Incubus God Eater. He's already hot as hell. That's just how everything works," retorted Marcus with a pout. "Who's the DM here?" snapped Alec, looking very sternly at Marcus. Reluctantly, Marcus put down his dice, and mumbled under his breath about how it was unfair I was not letting him have his way. On the way to the Beastken Empire, the party set up camp with James taking the first watch, but when it was Tiana's turn to take the next watch, Marcus was quick to speak. "I want to have sex with Tiana's character," and again was rolling. "You don't. You're still asleep," I responded, beginning to get irritated. "How come? Do you know anything about my character? What it means to be a God Eater? They are the most powerful thing in existence. If this was an anime, every single girl would want to have my character's child," he whined like a little schoolgirl. "But this isn't an anime," retorted Tiana, also taking offense as to how this guy wanted to do the nasty with her character without her consent. "Yes, it is. D&D is just the Western version of anime. It only gets worse as the campaign progressed. When they arrived, it went south very quickly. I told them that they were brought before the Beastken Empress and her consort. Instantly, Marcus jumps into action, slamming his hands on the table. "What does she look like?" he spat. Like, in real life, spit flew from his mouth. What do you mean?" I asked. "The Empress, is she hot? Does she have a nice rack? Does she dress in a sultry manner? Is she being satisfied enough by her consort? He quickly fired back. She's beautiful. In their eyes, she's the representation of the goddess Iko herself, but only those of royal blood can sit on the throne, and only those of noble lineage can marry into the family. Shot back Tiana, visibly angry at how this guy was just thinking with his lower head. I challenge the consort to a duel for her. If I win, I will become the Beastkin's new leader and impregnate her with my children. He laughed as if he was some sort of serial killer. I was having none of this. This guy was clearly trying to throw my campaign out the window, and the other players were no longer enjoying the campaign at all, seeing that he was making it all toxic. As you begin to eye the Empress up and down while adjusting your pants, the Empress notices this and snaps her fingers. You are surrounded by guards and thrown into prison for looking at one of the royal family in such a disrespectful manner. You can't do that! I'm the main character! She should only be in love with me, seeing that my character is obviously better than her boy toy, he shouted. I told the other three the reason why the Empress had pulled out of the alliance. Her daughter had been taken hostage, and tomorrow, in-game, was the Festival of Falling Grass. It was also the summoning day, where Iko would just for one day possess the firstborn daughter of the royal family and bestow blessings on those who were faithful. I break out of prison and find the local brothel, chimed in Marcus arrogantly. I can't. The cells are made of arcane magic that can hold back even the most toughest opponent. I spoke. That's stupid! My character is a level 5. They were level 5 by this time. This should be no problem for me at all, he scoffed. You're staying in there until the Empress decides to let you go, snapped James. It was obvious that Marcus was not happy about the whole thing. Oh well, Snowflake. But that is what you get for letting a thirsty weeb think that he can do whatever he wants. It didn't take long before Tiana caved, mainly because Marcus was nagging her. Her character approached the Empress and just barely convinced the Empress to let Marcus's character go. Marcus didn't waste any time and began to find the local brothel. When told by the others that they had to find the royal princess, Marcus didn't care. The Empress was such a bitch! She didn't want my super sword. You can find her stupid daughter without me. I'm gonna have fun with the girls at the brothel. Little did he know was that this was an extremely big deal in the eyes of the Empress and their deity. The three went on their typical dungeon crawl, decoding the message that the Empress had given them. Marcus didn't even know about it, as we all excused ourselves from the table and worked on it. They found the entrance and went through all the traps and ensuring it was all safe, clearing the boss fight, which was a pretty tough one. They got the princess back. When they returned, Marcus's character was waiting in front of the Empress and her consort. I bet you all struggled without me, he chuckled. The Empress embraced her daughter, and with tearful eyes thanked the three of them, excluding Marcus obviously. The three of them received massive amounts of XP, and received 1,000 platinum for their efforts, ensuring the safety of the crowned princess. All three of them were welcome in the Beastkin Empire, with open arms, and were told that they were also the VIPs for the summoning of Iko, meaning that they can get a front row seat to witness Iko in all of her godly glory. High fives were passed all around between Tiana, Alec, and James. Marcus was having none of it. Well, Marcus, you reap what you sow. How come they get so much coin and XP, but I get nothing? He hissed, clearly upset. You didn't do anything. All you did was play hooky and hookers. Oh, and by the way, make a Constitution saving throw. I growled, clearly upset at how this guy had almost derailed my campaign with his debaucheries. I rolled a 12, he sneered, as if it was the greatest throw in his life. I cleared my throat and spoke. One of the hookers that you slept with gave you herpes. The table was filled with giggles as everyone struggled to contain their laughter. That's what you get for letting yourself be led around by your super sword, chuckled James. That will teach you to play, instead of acting like some big shot anime character when you clearly are not one, chimed in Tiana. You guys are gonna regret making an enemy of me, snarled Marcus. For the rest of the campaign, Marcus never came back. We ended up having such a good time that I was even asked to DM another session, even doing a few one-shots. When I told my friend about Marcus, he laughed so hard he nearly passed out. DMing is no joke. You'll always get someone like that. And yes, that includes me. Sure, I like my anime and all, but by no means do I let it interfere with my campaigns, whether I'm a DM or a PC. I always hold that rule close to me. Never let your alter ego overwhelm you, and never let a thirsty weeb try and play in a D&D campaign when you know for a fact that he or she will ruin it. End this story. Look, I have made absolutely no effort to hide the fact that I am also a weeb. I mean, I literally had Japanese strawberry milk come in for delivery this week. I ordered authentic, from Kyoto, udon noodles, miso paste, bonito flakes, and a bunch of other things including green tea. I've also been making an effort to learn Japanese, so I'm a pretty big weeb, and I think that makes me have a little bit of authority when it comes to speaking about weebs. And this guy can duck right off and never play D&D again, in my honest opinion. No, you're not the main character ever in a D&D campaign unless it's like literally just you and the DM playing. And no, just because you're like chaotic neutral or whatever he was and you're, some god killer or whatever, just because your race says something like in the lore just a little bit, you can't construe it to say, yeah, I'm just going to bang everyone that I like. No, does not work like that. And again, just because it happens in like an isekai anime or something like that, does not mean that you can, my brain broke. Everything about this was wrong. Let's reset. No, D&D is not the Western version of anime. And I think if you are a weeb and you've never played D&D before, and you had this kind of mentality, I don't know how this mentality even exists, but let's say you have this mentality. No, it is not. And that's all I'm going to say. Anyways, let's go to the next story. Story number 2. Veruca Salt plays a gnome wizard. I had gotten back into D&D after the COVID lockdown in early 2020. I hadn't played since the late 1980s, so a lot had changed. I joined a Fantasy Grounds game. I didn't know anyone, and it seemed clear that I was the old-timer in the group. It was a homebrew short adventure, 4 sessions, that, if it worked out, it would become a campaign, since the DM didn't know anyone and wanted to get a feel. It started very well. In session 0, we rolled up characters. I was a human monk. The other 4 players were a gnome wizard, elf druid, human cleric, and dwarf barbarian. The gnome and elf were female players. First session, not wanting to engage in the story. The first issue was the gnome at the tavern. A fight broke out in the tavern between NPCs over a map. It was a setup for us to engage, the map was a hook. However, the gnome didn't want to engage, and convinced us that it was not our business. The DM read the room and let the fight play out, and afterwards one of the brawlers was injured and needed our help. Cleric was going to heal him, but no. The gnome again put her foot down. These are bad drunks fighting, and we should take no part in it. I could not tell if she was role-playing, blind to the hook, or just being difficult. So I let it go. She makes such a toss about it, we leave the tavern and the injured person. Then we are summoned by the mayor who needs some help. I could see where this was going. Another hook to get our adventure started. The mayor said that there was a disturbance at the ruins, that are said to be plagued by creatures. The gnome went into this full Q&A session. Why? What? Where? It went on for 20 minutes of this interrogating questions of the mayor. The mayor finally said, "Please investigate and I would gladly pay." Nope, not happening. The gnome felt it was not important and had nothing to do with us. There was no convincing her. Then she wanted to shop for some items. I asked what should we shop for, because we should know where we are going to get the proper gear. She said she just needed better gear, and check out the shop. Her argument was we should gear up before adventuring. The shopping turned into an argument and haggling over prices. She argued with the DM the gear was more expensive than the player's handbook prices. He explained some items were hard to come by in this town, hence the prices. At this point, the elf said, getting tired of this, We don't have enough GP anyway, since we haven't done any adventuring yet. And Gnome said we should at least know the prices. So right out the gate we have someone trying to metagame by using player's handbook information that her character in the story would not know. We've seen this a few times in the past in other stories. Anyhow, let's continue. Second session, Veruca Salt lives. In the second session, DM wised up, realizing that he was going to have a hard time hooking us. He would introduce an NPC and story thread to yank us in. We ran into a close friend of the dwarf, a fellow dwarf, and his party was overrun when exploring the ruins, and some may still be alive, if we could help. Gnome went into another Q&A. How well do you know this dwarf? And similar questions. The dwarf didn't play her game, and said, he saved my life, and I owe him a debt. We're going. We went with her in a grumpy mood. In the first battle with some goblins, and we find a magic ring among the dead goblins. The cleric finds it, but the gnome demands it because she is a wizard, and it is magic. We don't know what it does, other than we have to be attuned to learn about it. Wizard fails an Arcana check, but demands to know what the ring does. She rolls again without asking. It was high, like a natural 16 or 17. She says that it is high enough to know what it does. The DM ignores her and begins describing the chamber. She gets mad and starts saying over and over, "Hello? Hello!" Oh, so we're dealing with a Karen, I guess. Finally, the DM says, please stop. You failed the Arcana check. You have no idea what it does. But perhaps someone in town can tell you, or you may learn about it while exploring the ruins. She says, but I want to wear it now. The first thing that popped into my head was Veruca Salt, from Willy Wonka. Yeah, I'm getting the same amount of vibes. I agree with OP here. The DM says, try it on. She says, but I don't know what it does. Awkward pause, and the DM continues to describe the chamber. We have another encounter with some goblins. Nothing of interest among the dead. Veruca says, no magic items? How come the other ones had a magic ring and these have nothing? She demands we search for everything. We find nothing. She grumpily says, I told you this was not worth it when the mayor asked us to come. Third session, triggered. The third session, we find one of the dwarves in a cell tied up and tortured, and we rescue him. She mumbles, he better be worth it, because I did not want to come here. Some exploring and battles, and we find a chest with a magic axe, +1. We agree the dwarf takes it, but Gnome gets mad because she still wants to find out what her ring does, and the dwarf knows what the magic axe does. She starts getting into a fit and whining it's not fair. The DM relents to end her complaining and lets her roll an Arcana check again. She rolls a natural 1. I could not help but laugh, and did not have push to talk, and everyone heard me laughing. She got very upset and told me it's not funny. I asked the DM, isn't a natural 1 a critical fail? And there is a critical failure table, a sarcastic joke. She got very upset and said I am triggering her. She said she needs to take a break, and that my comment upset her too much to continue. We ended the session there. Afterward, DM chat and issues. The DM later contacted me and said she chatted with him after the game session and was very upset and sounded like she was crying. That my laughing and comment triggered her and I was creating a toxic game environment. I was stunned. He said he did not agree with her, but she said my laughing at her rolling a 1 when she wanted to know what the ring did was a bullying tactic, and that there was no critical role table and was just trying to trigger her on purpose. I admit it was a joke. He asked me if I would apologize for the next session. I laughed and said sure. Session 4. Just can't let it go. A week later and we begin the session. I forgot all about it and it seemed that the DM did as well. We start with a recap and begin. But Veruca says, aren't we forgetting something? The cleric says, we searched. There is nothing. We got everything. Let's go. She says, N-A-P-O-L-O-G, and emphasizes each syllable. I know what she means, but clearly the rest of the players don't. The cleric says, for what? She gets mad. Not you. Him for laughing at me. The elf says, are you serious? Veruca gets into a long-winded story about how my laughing and then suggesting a critical failure table triggered her, and that I was bullying her. She spoke with the DM and he assured her I would apologize, and he agreed that bullying was bad and we would not have players in the table that behaved like that. The DM chimed in and said, "Wait a second. I said I would speak to him and asked if he could apologize. I also told you I do not allow bullying, but did not think laughing and making a joke was being a bully." She went into a flip-floppy fit. First, she said how the DM comforted her when she spoke to him and that he agreed about bullying is bad, and then got mad at him in the same breath and promised I would apologize. It became very sad, and I started to feel horrible. She was not mentally stable. I was about to joke and call her Veruca Salt, but did not have the heart. I apologized sincerely and said I was probably not a good fit for the game. I said thank you and excused myself at the start of the session. End post. What OP described here, I think, was a perfect example of Veruca Salt, or in this case, we're just going to call her a Karen. And look, I'm not for bullying by any means, but I don't think he was bullying. At the table, when you're rolling dice and things happen like a natural one, you kind of have to take it in jest and mess around. You know, you're there for fun. Yes, she really wanted to know what that ring did, but if she just put it on and experienced some repercussions from not knowing what it did, that could be entertaining in and of itself. So it seemed like she was taking the game super seriously, way more than you really should in D&D. But yeah, I get it, everyone plays D&D a little differently. Some people may prefer a more serious playstyle than others. But what it sounded like is that everyone at the table wanted a more lighthearted and fun experience, and she was wanting to go super serious on this and went full-blown Karen when it didn't go her way. So, in my opinion, OP should have stayed at the table and the DM should have probably let her leave. I don't think she was a good fit. Anyhow, that's it for today's stories. As always, the source of them is in the description below. And if you like the stories and you want to see more videos just like this one, be sure to hit that subscribe button and bell notification icon in order to be notified of my future videos. Now, while you wait for those future videos, here are a few related videos that you can watch from my channel in the meantime.